On this episode of 9 to 5 Faith, I am joined by Brenda Cox Harkins, and she is sharing how her faith and her new framework, Loud is Not a Language, she uses to guide her leadership, focusing on individual strengths to build better teams and relationships. And we talk a lot about how we merge our faith with our work, and I really hope that you take a lot out of this conversation. How are you doing today?
I'm so good, and I'm glad to be here with you.
I am glad to be here with you. And I actually just caught a glimpse of that picture behind you. I saw it, but I also absolutely love it because I love elephants. I think it's adorable.
They're wonderful.
Oh, they're so special. Is there like a special meaning behind that picture, or is it just like because you have
Well, I collect elephant things. And so I love this so much because I don't know if you can see, but the baby's got hold of the mama's tail.
Yeah, that's adorable.
The whole thing with female elephants is really cool.
So. Yeah. And they're like their memory, and they're so smart and all of it. It's funny. I kind of got attached to elephants because of my great grandmother. She loved elephants. So whenever I was like in a store or something and they had something that was like elephant, I would like go and buy it for her. And anyways, so that it's an adoptive love of elephants, if you will. So can you tell our audience, besides the fact that you love elephants, can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I actually think that one of the reasons I love elephants is part of about myself, because do you know that the female elephants will surround a mama that is giving birth. They will surround her in a circle, and they're looking out for predators, and they will actually kick dirt around her to keep the smell away from predators. Like that community, that tight-knit community, that protection, that care for one another. Yeah, that's a wonderful thing about elephants, and a part of myself too. So yes, I am I'm passionate about everything that I do. I love mining the golden people, and I love pretty fiercely.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what is kind of your 9 to 5, so to speak?
Okay, well, so I am the founder and president of Harkins Leadership Group. We do coaching, training, workshops, that kind of thing. My focus is on Loud is Not a Language now, which is a thought framework that was downloaded to me in 2016 for communicating in a way that builds better quality relationships and helps our influence to have more impact.
Yeah. So loud is not a language.
Loud is not a language.
All right. Unpack that for me.
Unpack that. Let me go back to 2016 to unpack it. Okay. All right. So I was at a dinner that was very just social business in nature. People didn't know each other super well. And it was 2 weeks before the Clinton-Trump presidential election.
Okay.
Somebody at the table said, "So what do you think about our first woman president?" And there were some super pro-Clinton and super pro-Trump people at the same table.
Yeah.
And it got loud.
Yeah.
It did get loud in volume, but it got louder in attitude and assumptions and accusations. And oh my goodness, I literally just sat back in my chair and was watching, thinking, what is happening? Like, these are intelligent, successful business people that have no clue. They don't have a clue that what they're so passionate about wanting the other people to understand, they're just pushing them farther away from it.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there at the table watching, thinking, oh my word, I don't know what to do. Somebody got up and left. I thought about it myself, but I said, okay.
Probably the person who asked that question.
Right. Well, they were probably the loudest, actually. So I'm sitting there and I just said, Lord, I don't know what to do. Like, am I supposed to say something?
Yeah.
And boom, loud is not a language. That phrase just kind of fell in my head. And I thought, what is that? Loud is not a language. And then I'm watching it play out in front of me as people are loud in attitude, loud in volume, not communicating, you know,
Thinking that they are. Just because you're talking doesn't mean you're communicating.
You got it. You got it. And so that started a journey down the path of developing this thought framework that's a little different for how to communicate with people.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's, I mean, on a side note, it doesn't exist yet, but it exists in my head. I'm kind of developing something similarly, not just around communication though, but it's called Be a Better Person, and it's soft skills of how to be a better person. And of course, one of them is communication and all of that good stuff. Also, you're talking to like, that was my degree. So I'm like, yes, all the communication stuff. It's my favorite to talk about. So when you say they had a loud attitude, what does that mean to you?
A loud attitude is an attitude that is right in their own eyes, doesn't listen to anybody else, doesn't consider that somebody else might have a perspective that is also right, arrogant, dogmatic.
There you go. And probably carrying a lot of assumptions with themselves as well.
Yeah.
So when you kind of founded this, leadership focused academy, I want to say that right. Leadership group. I'm sorry. When you founded this, in what ways did your faith play into kind of the conceptualization of this? Besides God, like dropping it down from heaven.
Yeah. So you're not talking loud is not a language specifically. You're talking about the business, the Harkins Leadership Group, right? So that is, it has everything to do with it, because my faith had everything to do with it. So much of what I did and do, I say did because I'm so focused on loud is not a language now.
Okay. Gotcha.
The other stuff, I'm not in it as much, but going into businesses, helping people to understand, what their strengths and talents are and what that looks like within their, what for leaders, what that looks like within their teams, and then just within teams themselves, what it looks like to have so many different strengths and talents, some which really oppose each other, but to begin to understand them and appreciate them as a unique person. So that plays into my faith because, I believe so strongly, that each one of us is made in the image of God. He put the gifts and talents inside of us. And I've had so many beautiful opportunities to in those times with my coaching and training with people, when you're calling out what's great about somebody, you're really calling out what God put in them. It stirs things in their heart. And they begin to ask questions. And there have been a lot of conversations I've been able to have around faith simply because of that.
Yeah. Now, would you say it is a faith-based organization, or is it just an organization that is kind of built on the premise of faith?
Yeah, no, not a faith-based organization. But
I always like to clarify that because it does differentiate how you operate, not necessarily like in a functional sense, but like also in a value sense as well.
Exactly. So yes, as far as how it's run, it is owned by faith-based people. Okay. But and run by faith-based. But yeah, we don't go in and preach. We're in the business world.
Okay. So you are like in the business corporate world. That was going to be my next question of like, who is this like leadership kind of aimed at?
Yeah, it's in the business world. It's corporate. It usually starts off with the leaders in the company, usually the C-suite leaders, who then apply it to their leadership teams, who then apply it to their teams, and it kind of trickles on down.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it usually starts with leaders.
Yeah, that's awesome. And why did you decide that the business world was where this was needed, and that why did you kind of step into that?
Into it.
Okay.
to it, Paige. I didn't decide it.
Fair enough.
So before this, I was very much in the ministry world. And my husband, who was CIO at a division of a large corporation, wanted me to come in and do some training with his team.
Cool.
And actually, we did it together.
Okay.
And then he didn't have time to continue it, and more teams wanted it. And so I got that job.
You did fall into it.
I literally fell into it and was not excited about it. I don't know. Because I had always been in a ministry, faith-based kind of world. I just had a picture of business as being I don't know what I thought. I mean, it's just people, right?
Yeah.
People are people when we're at whatever setting they're in, but I had a different picture of it. So I was intimidated at first, and actually remember going to, I went to a division in Canada to work with an entire department over a week's time. Again, this is because of my husband. And and in that time, I was walking into a meeting that, like when just all of the negative head stuff starts happening, all of these questions start just bombarding me. Like, what are you doing here? You don't know anything about this company. You don't know about what they do. What if they start using acronyms? You don't know what those acronyms mean. What if this? What if that? And all of a sudden my heart's starting to race, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? And because of the work that I do and help other people do, I help them get this short little statement of, this is who I am. And so I was like, what am I doing here? Oh, my statement. I'm here to mine the gold in people. That's what I do. Yeah. And all of a sudden, everything all of the fear, all of the heart racing, it fell away, because it didn't have anything to do with the industry that I was working with or the acronyms they used. It had to do with the people that were there and mining the gold from them. So yes, everything has to do with my faith-based, has to do with being sure people know who they are and why they're doing what they're doing, and then they can do it wherever they are with confidence.
Yeah, I love that. I want to know, is there something that you have seen in doing a lot of like corporate leadership coaching? Is there something that you have seen that kind of the business structure does better than the ministry structure?
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm just curious.
Yes. In the business world, there's a lot more openness to different people, different ideas, different thoughts, different perspectives. There's a lot more acceptance of that. For some reason, I mean, how did we get there? I don't know. But in the ministry world, we don't allow for that. Why? I mean, we don't have to agree with it to understand other people.
Yeah.
For some reason, we don't agree. We cut it off, Yes, so much more, I guess I would say, love and acceptance. Actually, in the business world, which completely surprised me.
I always say, I mean, with the communications background, I'm like, Christians just need like a really good PR campaign, like, and like not in the sense of like spinning the truth or anything like that, but in the sense of like the things that make headlines are the things that make Christians look really crappy. And like the thing, like the good Christians out there who are like, doing the gospel the way Jesus modeled it, they don't get the headlines or anything. So I'm always like, Christians need a good PR campaign.
They do. And you know what? The Loud is Not a Language has 3 other books in the series coming out. And the next one that I'm working on now is Loud is Not a Language for Christians.
And how does it? Can you give us like
learn how to talk to each other first, right?
Okay. Okay. So it's to talk to each other.
It's both. It's
Is number
learning
three
to
going to
talk
be
to the
talking to the secular world?
It's like, why talk to the world when you can't even talk to each other, right? Let's
Yeah.
start there and then we'll move it on out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing when, talking, within the Christian community or even outside of it, one thing that, when political tensions are high and everything, my husband has a tendency to kind of get really wrapped up on it. And so like one thing that we do in our house is we don't watch the news anymore. So there's that. But one thing that I told him, and I said, listen, how intentionally and fervently you believe what you believe, the person on the other side believes the opposite. Like
Just
how
passionately.
as passionately, like could someone come up to you and change your mind? No. Okay, then that's what the person opposing you or the other side or whatever, that's how they think. And that is like the same kind of values and virtues they're holding on to in this with that same like white knuckle grip.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Share,
Much to say on that. Yes.
please share. That's what we're here for.
Oh, well, okay. So within this model of loud is not a language, there's like two different parts that the first part deals with us.
Okay.
And so the chair model is what I call it. When you ask somebody to pull up a chair, you're inviting them into a conversation. So that inviting somebody into a conversation is very different than let me tell you how I think.
Yeah.
And so the chair is a acronym with 5 points for one for each letter that helps us do a heart check.
Okay.
So it's courage, humility, authenticity, integrity, and respect. So courage to enter the conversation, humility to recognize that other person, what you just said, that other person's point of view is every bit as valid as yours because they had experiences that led them to believe what they believe, just as you had experiences that led you to believe what you do. Authenticity. So many times we think when we listen to other people, we're being not true to our own convictions or something. I don't know how that gets twisted in our brains, but recognizing we can be authentic, we can be real, we can have our convictions as long as we have the humility and the respect for the other person as well. And then the integrity is one that I'm going over this so fast, but the integrity is one that really deals with our emotions. I mean, our motivations. And so it's like, if I come to talk to you with a motivation to get you to believe like I believe,
right,
that's not integrity on my part.
Yeah.
And if I can sit with myself long enough to listen to what are my motivations and just ask, Lord, show me what my motivations are, and having this conversation. Some conversations we're just not ready to have yet because we're in the right place.
Right.
And I always like to ask myself, if somebody was talking to me with the same motivations that I have at this moment for talking to them, would I want to hear what they have to say?
Yeah.
So it's just a good heart gauge, you know. So I think a lot of times we want to enter into conversations before we are ready, before our mind and heart are aligned as they should be.
Yeah.
And so taking the time to do that is good.
Yeah. And I'm also hearing too, like, I think that when we go in with proper motivations, I feel like that as a culture and kind of like, I guess in like the news cycle that's like constantly churning, we feel the need to enter into conversations before we're ready. And we feel pressure to.
Yeah.
From like external sources. And I think that it takes a lot of like courage and gumption to say, no, like I'm not going to have this conversation.
And we have been, I think that so much of why we're like that is that it's kind of how we're trained, even
Mm,
from school age children. In school, who knows the answer to this? Oh, me. Like
right,
we're not taught to be quiet, sit, think, prepare. We're taught to give a quick answer,
right.
and whoever gives the most correct answer is applauded, right? And
Right.
so we just kind of are trained to
Yeah.
operate in that way. And you kind of have
Yeah.
to do an untraining of yourself.
Yeah.
Well, let me sit and be quiet for a minute
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. And I mean, with that like speed of reaction, I have like it's incredible because I haven't been around like little kids a ton, but like I have a nephew who's about to turn 2 years old. And it's so interesting because I watch, my sister interacting with him, and um she'll ask him to do something, and you think he's not listening, but it
Mm.
is just taking a little bit longer for his tiny little brain to process. And so like when I was watching, I would watch her kind of like patiently wait for him to respond or not respond to what she is asking him, like, hey Trip, can you get off that couch? And like he is like sitting there. I was like, okay, what does it mean, get off a couch? Okay, let me go do it now. Right. And you see it churning. And I feel like when I observed that, it was so just rarely seen to allow kids to have that processing time, because
Yeah, that's
we
a
do
good
say
mom.
like if you
Good
don't
for her.
yeah, she's such a great mom, because if you don't see that immediate reaction time, it's like, punishment. You're not listening, you're not obeying, you're not respecting me, when really you just have like there's that time to process. And yeah, I think that totally agree with what you're saying, is like we are kind of pigeonholed into replying and responding in a quick way as well.
Instant, quick answer.
Yeah.
What's the answer? Yeah.
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 When I'm in meetings sometimes, I've had bosses be like, "Hey Paige, like, you okay?" I'm like, "Yes. I'm just still processing this. Like, I'm not sitting here quiet because I'm upset or I'm mad or anything. I am just like absorbing everything, and then I can decide how I feel about it and how to respond and what questions I have."
And I love it that you know that about yourself and you're able to say that, because that's
Yeah.
one of the things that we do going into companies is to, these people are wired to, you're going to get the best from them, when a certain group of people, when you give them the time to process the information, what
Yeah.
you give them is going to be gold.
Yeah.
But if you pressure them to answer quickly, you're not going to get the best, and they're going to be frustrated. And then there's other people that it's like, let's get going, and they're thinking as they're moving, they're wired
Yeah.
that way too. So
Yeah.
just appreciating all the differences about one another
Yeah.
is really
Yeah, I said this last night to a friend. I said, "Yeah, you guys are just flying the plane while you're building it." And some people are like that. Some people can definitely do that. I am not one of those people. And so yeah, that, and like also I just have the moment where like whenever I'm like meeting with someone, they go, "Oh, do you have any questions?" I go, "I don't right now, but I probably will." That
they
is
get
my
back with you, right?
that is my reply to them of like, I don't have anything right now, but guess what? Like, give me like a day to think about it and I will come up with questions, because I am a big questioner.
It's how we learn best.
It is. It is. Here's a funny story. Anytime I go on like a trip or something and I'm like in a tour group or something and there's someone who's like teaching us and everything, I always get like pointed out like at the beginning of the tour, it's like, "Oh, does anyone have any questions about this?" And by the end of the tour, it's like, "All right, Paige, what's your question?" Like, because they know I will ask a question.
That's good.
Always fun, always fun.
Yes.
Um, how do you think, talking a little bit more about leadership, how do
Mhm.
you think like C levels and maybe like, your VP levels, how can they lead in a way that is most effective on a scale that they're kind of in charge of? So if you're like going up in the size of companies, like I work for a publicly traded company, it is a big company. How can you, I guess, kind of funnel the same leadership principles to like proximity? Does that make sense?
I think so.
In terms of like C-level is talking to like a few thousand, but as you kind of go down the funnel, right, you have like VPs who are overseeing a lot of teams, and then you have, senior directors who are seeing, a couple few teams and things like that. So how can the leadership principles be applied, or are they different principles from this kind of like big 1 to 2,000 down to like 1 to 1 for managers who have 1 or 2 direct reports?
Yeah, I don't think that the principles are necessarily different. I think that who they're applied to is, and I think that when we have leaders over many who are trying to control the many instead of releasing that to the ones that are directly over them, that's when we have problems. But to understand, so this is what I love about what I do, is going in and helping those C-suites to understand their VPs really, really well, and where they're at on that, like you said, building the plane, drive the plane while they're building it. Or is it going to take them 2 or 3 days to be ready to come up with the plan to say, this is what we're going to do, just to understand them well, and then to operate with them according to how they're wired, instead of expecting those that report to you at whatever level you're at to respond the way you like to be, to give that to others and then give them the freedom to operate in that, while showing them how to do the same with their teams. I've seen companies completely transformed by that. Completely transformed. Awesome. Because each person is flowing in what they do best.
Yeah.
And then the people that are not wired that way are going, I don't know how the heck to deal with it. Oh, but I know who does know how to deal with it. And so they begin to value those differences in one another. And
I'm a huge fan of like Strengths-Finder.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
I love it.
Strengths-Finder. Yes, I use the core clarity method of delivering that. But yes, love it.
Love Strengths-Finder, because it is also, to what you were talking about earlier, is like identifying each individual person's strength, and just applying it and seeing how it can kind of just work together in harmony, versus like competing against each other.
Well, and also even to say, oh my gosh, that's why you do what you do. And so the things that are negative, that you viewed as negative before, all of a sudden that negative quality, you see it in a different light, and you see how it's strength and how it helps move them forward, and it just shifts perspectives.
100%. And not only is that applied to like their strengths, but I think also is applied to kind of who they are and how they're built and like what things they have gone through. I think it adds that like human level to the persons that you're talking to. There's this book called The Complicated Heart, and this is like just an underlying message. It's, I guess, much more complicated of a story, but it's this daughter who finds healing through like her abusive and traumatic childhood through reading her mom's journals.
Oh, wow.
And she was able to come to a place of like acceptance and forgiveness and kind of like remedy of the relationship, because she understood
her mom's
story and her mom's thought process, and like not only what she was going through, but how she was seeing it all and everything like that. So that's what I think.
I'm going to read that book, because what you're telling me right there is so close to the loud is not a language principles. So what I did was I dismantled the word loud, and those 4 points are, after you get your heart right with the chair, those 4 are how you actually apply those skills. And
Mm,
what you just shared is so much a part of that, because L is to listen
mm,
to the other person, to
yeah.
hear and understand where they're coming from, to listen to their story. So many times we want to ask, I mean, we want to speak, but when we
Mm,
stop and we ask the questions of them and we listen to them, don't we all want to be heard? Everybody
right.
wants to be heard. And when we give that to somebody else, there's value that we're handing to them, you know?
Yeah.
But then the O is owning your journey and the biases that you have because of that. So as
Mm-hmm.
you're listening to this person, they may say some things that trigger you. You know, they
Mm-hmm.
may say some things that you just want to go, oh, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
But if you have gone through the process of actually examining your own life experiences and being honest with yourself about the biases you hold because of things you may believe about those experiences, then when those things come up, you're able to go, oh, I know why I'm feeling this rising up inside, but let me listen to what they're saying. So that I can do the you,
Yeah.
that is understanding that other person, which is what it sounds like the girl in this book did.
Yeah.
Understand the other person's story
Yeah.
so that you understand their biases and where
Yeah.
they're coming from and why they think and feel like they do. You know, and when we do that with one another, we listen and own and understand, then we're able to develop new ways to move
Mm.
forward.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, forgiveness, like you said, with
Yeah.
her is a big part of that, right?
Yeah. It's a really great book. And I think too, like, there's the misunderstanding as like a Christian culture when we apply things like that. Um, that understanding is acceptance or allowance. And
Yeah.
I think that it is really important that we set the groundwork, and like people who are listening to this, who are like starting to like grip their chair and like stand
Right.
up at us, like understanding is just like what you said. It's listening to them and hearing their perspective. It's not necessarily um endorsing
In
what.
understanding does not require agreement at
Right.
all. You
Right.
can understand and completely disagree, but you
Yeah.
can understand. And in that understanding, you can have compassion.
Yeah.
And that's where I love reading the scriptures about when Jesus healed people. Before so many of those, before it says, and he healed them, it says he had compassion
Mm,
and healed them.
yeah.
And there's just
And
something about,
then told them to repent.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. But you don't start off with that, right?
Right.
You start off with judgment. And that shouldn't be the goal to, oh, I'm going to do these things so I can end up telling you what to do. Because then
Yeah.
your motivations are all wrong. You just
Yeah.
take it one step at a time and start with loving the person in front of you
Yeah.
and trust the Holy Spirit to guide where that goes.
Yeah. And that's just a recurring theme that I love hearing from everyone I'm talking to on this podcast, is that like, see the humanity in the people that you're working with, because like throwing a Bible at them is not going, like, 9 times out of 10, there's always those really like crazy Holy Spirit moments where like, yeah, like I just told them the gospel and they came to Jesus. But when we're working with people every single day, um, we get to walk alongside them and do life alongside them and then move from there.
Right. Yeah. And if we can remember that the most important thing that Jesus himself said for us to do is to love him, love God with all our heart, mind, soul, strength, and to love each other as we love ourselves. Like that's it. Like in a nutshell, he said that sums up all everything right there. If
Mm,
you just love God and love others.
yeah.
And in doing that, it like gives Holy Spirit the freedom to do so much more than we could do on our own by trying to control the situation.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Now I have this inkling to ask this question, and like the answer might not be no, and you might not understand the question, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's kind
Okay.
of like chewing at me in the back of my head right now. Is in teaching in teaching loud is not a language and your other endeavors that you all the hats that you wear, have you ever had anyone who is like listening to this who sees the Christian in it, like sees the kind of like pure heart in it?
Yes. I mean, I think many people, whether they see the Christian in it or not, they see the pure heart. And I
Mm-hmm.
think those that are Christians, definitely, that people will come up to me and they'll say, "You're a Christian, aren't you?"
Yeah.
And I haven't even said anything that somebody who doesn't know the Lord would have picked up on.
Right.
It's just the loving, honoring, respecting people for being
Yeah.
creations of God
Yeah.
with amazing gifts.
Yeah. And I think that's so important too when we're looking at, you know, Christian businesses or running a business as a Christian, right? Those are what we were talking about at the beginning. Two
Different things.
different things. But I think that there might be the misunderstanding of people who are like, oh, I have to be in ministry if I want people to like know Jesus or know I'm a Christian or what
Mm,
have you. But like when you look at business owners, they don't have to profess their faith, and you can tell those who believe from those who don't
yeah.
in a very
Yeah.
practical way. You can say, okay, there's something different about the way they lead, the way they communicate, the way that they
Great
interact.
people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the way they interact with their company and with, like, I always like to say, like, they hire and fire and work to their values, and people who are Jesus followers fall into that.
Yes. Yes. Totally agree. And I also think that ministry, we've lumped it into this is what ministry means.
Yeah.
I have to be in ministry is like I have to be what? On staff at a church, running
Right. Working a
profit.
nonprofit. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
And actually being in ministry is doing what you're called to do wherever you're at
Yeah.
in a way that he's called you to do it.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
he'll flow through you in that.
Yeah. And I think too, just like, of course, there's like the examples of scripture where Jesus is like, just give it up, give it all up and go. And I think that works for some people. Like
Sure.
that
Oh,
works
yeah.
for some people. But I just had a conversation the other day of like, there are still practical elements to the church. There are physical, like even the church building of like, hey, we need to be able to equip pastors to speak to people in ways that is educated and centered on the Bible and scripture and the Holy Spirit. Like we need to be able to support our pastors in doing things like that. And so there's this element of like, okay, well, if we all just like threw it in the trash and like walked away and went on our thing, like who would be doing that? Right. There's like this practical element of actually building up the church that gets bypassed sometimes.
Yes.
For
Yes.
sure.
I agree.
So in what ways, talking as a business owner, we've talked about the work that you do kind of with your clients, but tell me a little bit about like the internal structure and the hierarchy and just the landscape of you building these businesses and writing these books. How do you align it with what God is calling you to do and with what scripture says?
Hmm. Um, a couple of years ago, there was every year at the end of the year, I ask for a word for the next year. Usually
Yeah.
it's just one word, but a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I don't remember, I got a phrase that was tightly and rightly aligned.
Mm.
And it has stayed with me. And so with what I do with who is on my team, who I do the work with, who comes alongside and who doesn't, all of that. That doesn't mean they have to believe exactly like I do.
Right.
It does mean that they have to value the things. We have to have the same values and
Yeah.
convictions in order to roll out what God has called this company to roll out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yes.
for sure. Now, I also have this nagging question because I actually struggle with this in working in-house for a bunch of different companies. When you look at kind of the values statement of a company, and then a lot of them make I don't want to call it a mistake, but I guess they make the secular assumption of obtaining the identity of the company. So like when you work here, you are XYZ. And and for me, that has always sat really funky with me because I'm like, at the end of the day, like, do I care about my work? Do I want to give my best to my work? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, it is so I can collect a paycheck to live, to be able to serve God.
Yeah, that's not
Like,
who I am.
that's not who I am. It's what I do, but that's also not who I am. So how would you say, like, if you're working with a company or something that is kind of having those values, like what would you say one to the company of like, hey, like make sure like you're not, sucking the life out of your employees, but also like how do you set up kind of a company culture to where, yes, like your purpose aligns, right, with what you were saying, tightly and rightly aligned. It aligns, but it's not all encompassing because Jesus
Yeah.
is our identity.
I think that when a company has a set of values or a mission statement or whatever of this is who we are as a company, I think it's important for the people who work there to understand and at least be on board with, okay, I get I'm okay with that. This is who this company is, and this is what I'm going to be supporting.
Right.
But I think for the individual employees, as well as for the leadership, to be able to take the gifts and talents and skills and all of that the person has and utilize them in the role that they're in a way that it supports that mission statement, that vision statement is great. Like, we, I'm just making stuff up here. We will always give exceptional care to our customers, whatever.
Right.
Okay. That person doesn't become that, but how are the unique giftings and the skills that they have going to help support the company doing that?
Yeah.
So that it's a funnel into when I'm here, I'm using who I am to help them. And then I walk away and I'm still who I am with all of these giftings.
Yeah.
It separates the two.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
It can be a process to go through because that can get confused. That's a good question because that can get confused.
Yeah, and I have seen it play out with one of the companies that I worked at. And I mean, I see no ill will of how the people who kind of push this campaign out internally to employees. And also, I don't think they had an internal communications manager at the time either. So there's also like that hump of like, they just like the C levels just kind of went and did it and like didn't really run it by anyone. I'm like, hey, this is how it's going to land. It was like turned around in like 24 hours. It was the quickest thing of just like, you get a random meeting that popped up on your calendar and you're like, what is this for? But I remember it caused such a stir, and like, I totally see where this uneasiness was felt by the employees because it was like, the catchphrase that they use is I'm all in. So you're either all in with the company or you're not. And if you're not, leave, like quit. Oh yeah. I think they offer people like a little bit of a severance if like they say like, I think they like paid you through the end of the month or something. If you're like, no, I'm not all in and like hit the hay. But the way it was delivered was like, this is either your life or it's not. And a lot of people had issues with it because they're like,
This
no,
is
like
my
this is
life.
my job.
Piece
Like
of it. Yeah.
the intent of the C levels and all of that was like, hey, you're either for our mission or you're not for our mission. But that's not the way it landed.
Wasn't
Also,
communicated that way. Yeah.
the importance of internal communication teams, guys.
Right.
But that's the way it hit. And I was like, oof, like that was not delivered. And I think that especially with business owners and people on the C level who are the founders as well, you find a lot of like, of course, this is their life because it's their baby, right? This is what they have grown up. This is what they have nurtured all these
Right.
years. Of course, it's all about them, but also like stepping back and being like, this is also not my employee's baby. This is my baby. I shouldn't expect my employees to do anything more or less than what they were hired to do.
Right. And this is the piece of caring for my baby that they have. And it's not
Right.
whole life. It's this piece that I hired
Right.
for.
Just because
Yeah.
they change their diapers doesn't mean they have to send them to college. Like,
That's right.
to
Right.
carry that metaphor all the way through. But yeah, I mean, and that's something that I've struggled with in terms of just like being not so much so having my identity be my work. I feel like I did go through a little bit of a phase, but by being surrounded by people who accept their work as their identity and feeling that pressure too as well. And so, yeah, you see it a lot in the corporate space, especially with,
You do. I think that one of the positive things, one of the few positive things about
let's hear it.
COVID, about 2020, was that I think some of that started to fall away.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm seeing that anyway.
Yeah.
That identity with the company is definitely not as strong as it was.
Yeah. And I think a lot of C levels had like kind of a rude awakening with the shutdowns and everyone working from home and everything.
Yeah.
They kind of got shook a little bit of like, oh wait, my employees don't want to spend 2 hours a day driving to this place, like obviously. Or like, hey, they're just doing it for a paycheck. Yeah, they need money to live.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Brenda, thank you so much for sharing your insight. And I'm excited to hear about your new books and read your new books as well. One question I always like to wrap up our conversation with is, what is one actionable takeaway that our audience can do to help them grow their faith and grow closer to God?
So the thing that I have learned that has been the most impactful to me, because I'm a fly the plane while you're building it.
Okay, fair enough.
I go. I love go. But I have learned the value of getting quiet. And so, I mean, it has become a practice throughout my day that there will be 2-3 times a day that I pull back. I may have 3 minutes, I may have 10 or 20, but I may have 3. And those 3 minutes are valuable just to get quiet and to just do where's my heart? How are we doing, God? How are you and me? Where are we at right now? How am I with others right now? And then just to get quiet and to not talk, just to listen to what he brings up in your spirit. I tell you what, that has been so valuable to me, to learn to just get quiet and listen. We think we have prayer time, like I got to go tell God everything, my laundry list of stuff that I want him to do for me or I need, whatever. Getting quiet and listening to what he's speaking to my heart has been the most valuable. So I think that what I would say from personal experience in just the last few years is to get quiet and listen to what he is saying to you. Even if you think you don't have the time, 3 minutes, you can hear a lot in 3 minutes.
I love it. Thank you so much, Brenda. Now, if people want to learn more about you, about your Love is Not a Language program, or
Love is a very good
language. Sorry. Oh my gosh.
Loud is not. That's okay. I just didn't want somebody else to be misunderstood.
Loud is not a language. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
If they want to learn more about Loud is Not a Language, where can they find you?
So loudisnotalanguage.com is the website.
Awesome.
And the book's on there. A workshop coming up in a couple of weeks is on there. There's a contact form that comes directly to my inbox. I'll get it personally. So if they want to reach out directly, you can do that as well.
Great. Awesome. Brenda, thank you so much for joining us. And I loved learning a little bit more about Loud and chair and all of those fun things. And I learned something new about elephants as well. I did not know that.
They're wonderful creatures.
They're so amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening and tuning in. And we will catch you next week on the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave those 5 stars.